He's coming up on 36, right?
Yeah.
He's
2 weeks from now, I think. Early happy birthday, Russ. We're giving you a present of us talking about how much you've been garbage early in the season. Sorry.
Well, I do think that it's a disservice from the front office that he's basically playing with either kids or what's looking like a washed up Dario Saric, who has been really rough. Dan, where's Zeke Naji? This guy got a 4-year, $32 million extension. And this Dario Saric that has just been really rough watch he can't make a layup. He's not shooting threes. I don't know what he's bringing in this role under Michael Malone. And I said Michael Malone. I got you.
You did.
That's my biggest issue here is this seems like this is oil and vinegar. Like this front office and the coaching staff, it seems like Michael Malone is almost sticking it to the front office by not playing Naji and saying, I'm going to play a veteran because you've left me with Russell Westbrook and some kids, and I got no other choice. So Zeke Naji, who has shown his promise over the years, has been hurt, of course, but he just got a 4-year extension, and they've been playing Dario Saric over him, and it hasn't been good. And yet Michael Malone is like, no, we're not doing the Naji experience. So I'm concerned on that level, and the fact that like Russell Westbrook is still being relied on for big minutes here in the second unit. He had a good fourth game, but here are the ages of athletic supernova point guards in NBA history when they last played their last game. This is their age at the end. Isaiah Thomas, of course, with the Achilles injury, 32 years old. He was 32 when he was retired. John Wall, 32. Baron Davis, 33. Derrick Rose, 35. Oscar Robertson, 35. Tiny Archibald, 35. We are at that point with Russell Westbrook. So what he's doing now is exceeding every baseline of an athletic point guard who was, MVP, all NBA caliber, all-time great point guard. We just have never seen someone perform at a high level or perform, period, with these kind of wheels in their past. So Russell Westbrook, I feel like we might be very critical of him, but I also think in a way it's unfair the kind of position that he's been put in here as the face of that second unit. And unfortunately, he's got no one else to play with. And that's part of the reason why I think the 87.5 points per 100 possessions is actually more indicative of what we're going to see going forward than last year or the year before that. The on-court offensive rating for Russell Westbrook, this is surprising to me. Last year in the Clippers, it was 116. The Clippers were churning out 116 points every 100 possessions with Russell Westbrook on the floor last year as the second unit. And the Clippers were like, we're good. And I think it's unfair to Russell Westbrook when we make this comparison at 87.5 somewhat, because look at who he's playing with compared to last year. He had Paul George. He had James Harden. He had Kawhi Leonard anchoring with him in that second unit. And now he's got Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson, who I don't know what his offensive role is, period. And that's put a lot of pressure on Russell Westbrook to create something out of nothing. And I think, Dan, it's almost like I'm sticking up for Russell Westbrook in a way, is that this is really unfair to give this kind of chef kind of D-level grade ingredients to cook with.
I'm sure that Russell Westbrook and all of his fans feel like we're sticking up for him really, really strongly right now. I'm sure they're thrilled with the support we're providing for him. You're right. I mean, also to the point about what he's serving up, 9.5 potential assists per 36 minutes. He's still setting the table for these guys. There just hasn't been a whole lot of making on the other end. Those guys aren't eating off those feeds. And some of that, I mean, Strawther has opened the season shooting well. I think he's something like 11 for 20 from the floor. Like he's hitting shots. It's the other guys. And Saric, as you mentioned, that's a real problem because the whole idea is stretch five who can like move the ball, connect the sides of the floor, open things up. He's taken 1-3 in like 39 minutes. And that's a guy who's taken 5 or 6 per 36 for his whole career. Like something is disconnected there. And the glass half full, the optimistic take is with some more time and some more reps, some more opportunity, maybe they figure out, here's where he likes it on the floor. Here's sort of his best locations. We can get him into some more comfortable rhythm shots. The offense starts to flow a little bit better there. But you're to your point, if you are on the recipe for Russ at this point has largely been either give him a rim runner and 3 shooters or a roll man or a stretch 5 and 3 shooters. And right now, there's just not enough shooting on that second unit, certainly. And then no matter what the mix and match is of staggering the starters. And I think the spotlight for me, the person that winds up squarely in the middle of the headlights there is Michael Porter Jr. Because if you are starting to stagger those lineups and you're saying we want to keep a couple of starters on the floor with Russ, we want to make sure we're getting as much shooting on the floor around him. Jamal Murray, they've put him on, somewhat, and that's Jamal Murray also has not made a ton of shots early, but you feel fairly comfortable in that. That's been a look they've liked. Michael Porter Jr., before he made 4 of 7 against Brooklyn, had, I believe, made 5 of his first 23s in the season. 4 of his first 23s through 3 games. He's yet to score more than 16 points in a game, and he's posting the lowest usage rate of his career, right alongside guys like Kevon Looney and Santi Aldama, who honestly, Santi Aldama might be a better fit on this Nuggets roster than many of the other guys that we might be talking about in that kind of like mid-tier usage. Michael Porter Jr. is making max money. They signed him and they extended him. They anticipated him being a focal point centerpiece kind of player, a guy that could be the bridge to the next competitive iteration, fits perfectly in terms of size and shooting and off-ball movement alongside Jokic. But you need, that needs to show up. There needs to be a higher level of both an increased volume of threes and an increased accuracy rate. Mm-hmm. If you're not going to be able to get 2 starters making shots alongside Russ in that second unit, or any bench players who can make shots alongside him in the second unit, that to me feels like more of the discrepancy in the way that Denver's built. More so you're paying these other guys bigger money to not make shots, and then the blame doesn't necessarily need to all fall on the guy who's making $3.5 million.
This is the problem, right? You've just hit on it. Is if Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray are not playing up to their abilities, they're screwed.
Yeah, Denver's dead in the water if that's the case.
Because not only are their production is down, but they're locked into this roster. And who's going to take on those contracts if they're performing at this level? And so Jamal Murray at this stage, you have questions about his consistency ever since the playoffs last year. He went into Paris and it was a disaster. He did not perform well with Team Canada. And it was to the point where you started worrying wait, is this the Jamal Murray that is going to get a max extension this summer? And I was thinking myself, I don't know if you give him a max after what we've seen after, the regular season last year. Very inconsistent. He had a couple moments, of course, with Kevin Harlan. We remember that shot, and he's won a couple games still. But if you're telling me that Jamal Murray is going to be the answer for this Denver Nuggets team, I haven't seen it in the last few months. Paris, it was bad. Preseason, it was bad. He's been inconsistent this season. And so if you're hitching your wagon to Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. for the next 5 years with Jokic, I've got to be a little bit worried, not only for their team performance, but you can't move off of those contracts. It's the worst of both worlds. You're stuck with them, and you can't really flip them for an all-star. Look, my favorite stat with regard to Nikola Jokic is that he's the only MVP in NBA history to have never played with an all-star, an all-NBA player, or an all-defensive player once in his entire career. It's never happened. Jokic is the only MVP in NBA history through 9 seasons to have never played with a star on defense. And I know it's accolades. It's not, maybe you can argue Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray were all stars or all defense, or KCP was all defense at some point, but they've never been recognized as such. And we would have to kind of bend over backwards to say, yeah, Jamal Murray deserved it that one year. It's never happened with Jokic. And I don't think they're gonna do it. I don't see a path in which they get an all-star caliber player in a trade if you're moving Michael Porter Jr. his contract, if you're moving Jamal Murray. And how are you going to trade Aaron Gordon, who's the only one who seems to fit really well with Jokic right now? And yes, he got an extension here, but I do think that, man, if you're Jokic, he's been playing very nice publicly about not making a lot of noise about the roster and the roster construction. But that fact is still hanging over this team, that Jokic has never had a co-star of the same level that LeBron, that Magic Johnson, that Larry Bird, that Tim Duncan, Michael Jordan, all these multiple MVPs in NBA history have had co-stars, have had comparable co-pilots of that kind of accolade. And Jokic has been quiet this entire time. And now he's got this Russell Westbrook who's shooting 27% from the floor, 25% on threes. The assist to turnover ratio, okay. But even the best case scenario, they've needed overtime wins over the Raptors and the Nets. I'm selling. Solid.
I understand why you're selling. And I mean, it is difficult from the vantage point of these 4 games, which included 2 like kind of dispiriting losses and 2 really unconvincing wins, to say like it's all going to work out and come out in the wash. I think the argument from Denver's perspective, and they made this argument financially by the extension that they offered Murray this summer. The argument that they have is, or that they would make, is that Jamal Murray is that guy. You mentioned Tim Duncan. He's the Tony Parker. That's the argument, is that there's a number 2 on that level, somebody who, with them on the floor, with those 2 guys on the floor, they feel confident they can go up against anybody. Murray, despite the downplay to the end of the postseason and in the summer, and looking like a little bit shaky in the beginning of this season, he's like all of a year and a half, not even a year and a half removed, like 15 months removed from being awesome in the finals. He was awesome for most of the last regular season, best regular season of his career. And the like general, like large sample size of more than 500 games together, where they look at it and say, the Nuggets just like they kill people when those 2 guys are on the floor. 185 and 90 when Jokic and Murray play together before this season, going back to 2019-20, the bubble year.
Yeah.
55 win pace over a 5-year span, plus 11.1 net rating in nearly 6,000 minutes. They're betting on that. They're betting that will continue to be real. Obviously, past performance does not guarantee future performance. Maybe Jamal Murray isn't that guy anymore. And if that's the case, like they are in the, if that's a lie, we fight on that lie from The Wire. Like that is where they are. They have staked their claim to that as the way this all works, irrespective of whether or not Russ is able to hold things up in the second unit. If the fundamental core argument for why this team should contend is flawed, is proven to be untrue, then it kind of doesn't matter what Russ does.